Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching the evening news with me, Subhita Karir, on News Now. Well, we have some breaking news coming in, and that's related to major cabinet decisions that have been taken today. In a major boost to the agri sector, the government has approved projects that are worth nearly 14,000 crores in the sector. Now, these 7 projects include the much-anticipated Digital Agriculture Mission, which will include the development of an agri stack to serve as a comprehensive database through detailed records of farmers, land usage, and crop patterns. Let's listen in to what the INB Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw had to say while that briefing was going on, and then we'll be joined by a special guest to decode what these decisions really mean for the sector. Take a look.
Digital agriculture mission बेसिकली जो DPI का स्ट्रक्चर है, डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का स्ट्रक्चर है, उसी आधार पे एग्रीकल्चर के लिए इसका डेवलपमेंट किया जा रहा है। कुछ अच्छे पायलट प्रोजेक्ट्स हुए हैं, बहुत अच्छी सक्सेस मिली है। उसके आधार पे आज डिजिटल एग्रीकल्चर मिशन 2817 करोड़ रुपीस की टोटल इन्वेस्टमेंट से ये बनेगा। इसमें 2 फाउंडेशनल पिलर्स रहेंगे। एक रहेगा एग्री स्टैक, दूसरा रहेगा कृषि डिसीजन सपोर्ट सिस्टम। क्लाइमेट चेंज का प्रभाव पूरी दुनिया भर में पड़ रहा है, तो क्लाइमेट रेजिलिएंट क्रॉप साइंसेज और फूड सिक्योरिटी और न्यूट्रिशनल सिक्योरिटी फॉर 2047, उसको ध्यान में रखते हुए 6 पिलर्स इसमें रखे गए इस प्रोग्राम में। ये 3,979 करोड़ रुपीस का प्रोग्राम है, 3,979 करोड़ रुपीस का प्रोग्राम है।
All right, so that's Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw, of course, expanding more on the agri stack and, of course, the other decisions that have been taken as far as the agri sector is concerned. And to discuss the impact of those decisions further on the sector, I'm now joined by Madan Sabnavis, the Chief Economist at Bank of Baroda. Thank you very much, Mr. Sabnavis, for joining us here on ET Now. Quick question first. Several significant decisions that came in today to bolster farm-related activities. Of course, you have to look at the size, the outlay, which is of nearly 14,000 crores. How much do you think these will lead to easing of farm sector woes, stress, and of course, driving consumption, most importantly, so far as the rural economy is concerned?
Hello.
Mr. Sabnavis. Yes, sir. Please go ahead. Please go ahead, sir.
No, I didn't catch your question. I think I got cut in between. Could you please repeat it?
Mr. Sabnavis, I was actually trying to understand from you the impact of these major decisions that have been taken today by the cabinet so far as the agri sector is concerned. The outlay is massive, over 14,000 crores. How much do you think these decisions and these policy initiatives will lead to easing of farm sector stress, and secondly, driving rural consumption?
No, I think it's going to help in both ways. See, if you're looking at agriculture, I think what we have seen is that overall output has tended to be fairly whimsical in the past based on how the monsoon progresses. So the way I look at these measures which have been announced today is that especially if you look at, say, for example, the digital part which the minister had spoken of, I think this is very progressive because one bit of problem which farmers have today is the absence of information. So today we are trying to use the digital more to make sure that you have access not just to what the crop prices are, the water levels, but also you're looking in terms of things like the soil. So I think the soil, weather conditions, I think these are the things which are really important for taking cropping decisions. So I think this is one of the major pieces which I think will go a long way in order to provide more efficient systems as far as the farmers are concerned. The next part, if you look at things like, say, for example, we're talking of horticulture. Now, today, for example, we know very well that a large part of our food inflation which is coming is not coming from the traditional crops as such, but it's coming more from the point of view of the horticulture products, vegetables. So I think the kind of focus which the government has put here in to make sure that there is more cultivation of horticulture crops, something which will help to also ease the supply-demand imbalances which are there. I think that is another positive sign out there. So if you look at these measures, and then I think they've also spoken of something on livestock, that is the allied activities. So normally we tend to focus on the agricultural output and say, okay, agricultural sector is doing well or not. But today, for example, if you just look at the GDP numbers, we've seen that it's not the crops which have failed, but it's been more in terms of the allied activities. So I think this particular mission, I think, is fairly comprehensive. It covers both crops, horticulture, as well as the allied activities. And I think this is required for overall enhancing and creating more steady growth and output as well as income for farmers. Because today when we're talking in terms of rural consumption lagging, one of the factors behind it is that we're not
Yes.
seeing a commensurate increase
Yes.
in terms of income. So that's how we can look at it.
Yes. Yes. Yes, Mr. Sabnawis, very, very interesting points that you've mentioned. Of course, we'll come to those points in just a bit. But let me touch upon that agri stack, the development of agri stack that has also been approved. You touched upon that. Take us through the details of how that can really improve distribution issues and efficiencies. Of course, you mentioned a very important point about, that enabling farmers to sort of really sell their produce. But, what other kind of issues in terms of distribution and efficiencies will it really lead to bringing in the farm sector? And of course, any impact on, beating inflation, on softening inflation?
Yeah, I think distribution is an important aspect because today, for example, if you look at certain crops, especially in the horticulture space, we have a very high proportion of wastages. So that is where the distribution part comes. So one thing is I'm able to produce a fairly large quantity of whichever product we're talking of. But once we have the wastages, I think that leads to the problems which come in the overall supply chain. By the time it comes to the consumer, we may not be seeing 100% of the output, maybe it's 60, 70%, depending upon which product we're talking of. So by improving this particular link which is there, and you're able to improve it primarily on account of the fact that I have better information about what kind of crop is being grown, where all I could be selling it. I will be getting the information on the prices which are prevailing in different markets. So I think these are things which will get connected. But of course, I think something which I'm not sure if it's mentioned in this particular pack. I think improving or strengthening the logistics processes, which means storage as well as transportation, is something also which would be requiring a lot of attention from the point of view of the government. I think this is more of a state subject, but something which has to be taken on with some bit of urgency.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Sabnawis, we are absolutely out of time. So I have to ask you one final question before we let you go. Now, how much of these decisions will have an impact, like you were stating about consumption? How much of an impact will these decisions have on the overall GDP? I mean, considering that, last month's GDP number was reported to be at a 15-month low. Do you see that picking up, and what kind of growth are you expecting from the farm sector specifically after these decisions have been passed now on to this quarter?
We may not see the impact in the immediate quarter, but I think I look at it more from the point of view of the next couple of years. Now, we need to ensure that agricultural growth is more in the region of 3.5% to 4% on a sustained basis. And it should not be subject to these kind of vagaries which take place on account of the seasonal changes which we're seeing, the climatic changes which are taking place. So 3.5% to 4% is the kind of growth which that should be the trend kind of growth which we should see in case we're talking of GDP growth of overall of 7 to 8% at the aggregate level. And this is something which is going to facilitate the same thing. But to my mind, it will take a couple of years before we have all these pieces being put together.
Okay, a couple of years before we have all of these policies implemented, and of course their impact being seen as far as the overall growth in GDP is concerned. On that note, thank you very much, Mr. Sabnawis, for joining us and sharing your thoughts on what these decisions really mean. So big ticket decisions coming in from the cabinet as far as the agri sector is concerned. However,
if you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.